With us now from Washington is Jennifer Korn, the executive director of the Hispanic Leadership Network. Ms. Korn served in the Bush administration at the White House as director of Hispanic and Women's Affairs, and then as director of government affairs at the Department of Justice. And Ms. Korn, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Kathleen. It's great to be here.
Well, prior to the election, President Obama told the Des Moines Register that if he wins re-election, it will be due to the Republicans' anti-Hispanic rhetoric. President Obama went on to take 71% of the Latino vote. Was the president right? And did the GOP's attitude toward Hispanics cost Mitt Romney the election?
Well, I would say, Hispanics are a growing voting bloc. They are very important. And I would say they had some decision on how the election went. If you look at Florida, Nevada, Colorado, Hispanics absolutely made a difference. And as we look at the numbers even more closely, you'll probably see that Virginia and Ohio, Hispanics also made a difference, even though they're only about 5% of the Hispanic vote. So, in the last election cycle, Barack Obama got 67% and McCain got 31%. So that's an 8% spread of Hispanics going for the Democrat.
But did the GOP's tone this election cost them Hispanic votes?
Well, tone and rhetoric are very important. Something that we always advise from Hispanic Leadership Network for conservatives is the way that they talk about immigration reform. Even though it's only, depending on what poll you're looking at, second or fourth on Hispanics' minds as important, it's the tone that we use, and we sort of turn off Hispanics when we use harsh rhetoric. And so we can talk about immigration reform in a better way. And so, we can talk about national security. Hispanics would like a secure border. The myth that Hispanics want amnesty is ridiculous. We can talk about having a guest worker program, and we can talk about rehauling our visa system right now, which is a mess. I mean, we have something called the diversity lottery where 50,000 people get to come here just randomly. Why don't we put those in the family and work categories where they belong? So the visa system reflects the needs of the United States. So that is one issue, and I think that we have a lot of surrogates now, like Senator Rubio and former Governor Jeb Bush, who know how to talk about this issue, and I think that other conservatives will look to them, especially now that they only received 27% of the vote in this last election.
Now, Jennifer, these past couple of days, the GOP has done a lot of soul searching. Yesterday, Senator Rubio, who you just mentioned, called on Republicans to broaden their tent and improve their outreach to minority groups. How does the GOP do this, and how does it begin to repair its relationship with Hispanic voters?
This is something very close to my heart. In 2004, I ran President Bush's outreach for Hispanics nationally, where we started over a year out going into the Hispanic community and building coalitions and building a really good ground game. And, and we also did Spanish language TV and radio. And so it's possible to get more of the vote. We got 44% of the Hispanic vote. So it's about engaging Hispanics. If you want to expand your voting bloc, then you need to start talking to other people than yourselves. So, Governor Susana Martinez, the first Latina to ever be governor in the history of the United States, and she's a Republican, talks about the fact that, nobody had ever really talked to her about conservative issues until these two Republicans invited them to dinner, and they had this great conversation, and she sits in the car with her husband and says, an expletive, oh darn it, we're Republicans, what do we do now? And she said it was because some people had paid them enough respect to say, hey, listen, we want to talk about the issues with you. And so that's what conservatives and Republicans need to do, is go into those Hispanic communities, not be afraid to go into areas that are heavily Democrat and talk about the issues. Because Hispanics, yes, they might identify as Democrats, maybe over 65%, but when you actually look at the issues on education, on the economy, on jobs, they're pretty conservative.
Mm-hmm. Now, House Republicans plan to take up immigration reform after dealing with the fiscal cliff. What's the likelihood that after Republican losses Tuesday that the party will soften its hardline position on immigration? And is it likely that the GOP will agree to legislation that allows some illegal immigrants to seek more permanent residency or a path to citizenship?
Well, that's definitely the million-dollar question, right? What we'd like to see is that President Obama be a leader, and like he did not do in the first 4 years, where he completely broke his promise on passing immigration reform. He likes to blame the Republicans, that they were the reason why he didn't pass immigration reform. But let's remember, the first 2 years he was in office, he had a veto-proof Congress, and never once was there a piece of legislation or anything down on paper. So he's going to have to change his tone first. He's going to have to work with Republicans and say, okay, these are the principles I'd like to get legislation down on. What are those things that you want? And I think that there's 3 items on immigration reform where we could have bipartisan support. National security, truly securing our border, and that doesn't mean putting up a wall. That means using border security, that means using technology, and then in some places where it makes sense, putting up a wall. And then, like I said, the guest worker program and the visa system. I think those 3 issues we can get bipartisan support on, but the president has to, talk about tone and rhetoric. President Obama needs to stop talking harsh rhetoric against Republicans and blaming them for everything, and then Republicans need to come to the table and work with him.
Now, 50% of Latino voters turned out Tuesday and made up 10% of the electorate. That exceeded the record set in 2008 when Latinos made up a record 9% of all voters. Can a GOP presidential candidate win the White House in 2016 without this influential voting bloc?
It is going to be really hard. I mean, it is math. It's very hard to see that the Hispanic community continues to grow. 50,000 Hispanics turn 18 every month. And so those are new voters that are coming in, and as Hispanics are more acclimated into our culture, more Hispanics will start voting. So I can't see a path for any candidate where Hispanics aren't part of making the decision. And why shouldn't they be? Hispanics are Americans, they're citizens. They should be paid attention to, and we should be going after their vote.
All right, George Will this week called Senator Marco Rubio of Florida the GOP's big winner from election night. What is the impact of Mitt Romney's loss on what's been described as Marco Rubio's very bright future? And do you see him making a presidential run in 2016?
You know, Marco Rubio has been a wonderful friend to Hispanic Leadership Network. He's come to almost all of our events and spoke amazingly about the American dream, and he has a very bright future. I don't think the loss of Governor Romney is affected at all or affects his prospects. In fact, it really put him on the national stage and showed that he can really talk about conservative principles in a way that appeal to people across the board, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you're Hispanic or not. So he's got a really bright future. He's a leader. He's not afraid to say what's on his mind and to put his neck out there. I mean, before President Obama did that very political action on doing deferred action for undocumented children, Rubio was already out there doing an alternative to the DREAM Act. And so he's not afraid of the tough issues, and he's a real leader for us.
All right, last question for you. What does this week mean for the future of the Hispanic Leadership Network?
So for the Hispanic Leadership Network, a lot of people might think that, oh, only during election time are we going to be active. Absolutely not true. Our goal is a long-term sustained effort to engage Hispanics on conservative and center-right issues, to really have more Hispanics involved with the political process. Not enough Hispanics are voting, even though it was a record at 10%. 24.7 million Hispanics are eligible to vote, and only 11 million came out. So we have lots of room to grow, and we're going to take our message across the country. We're in 9 different states, and so this is an opportunity for us, and we hope that conservatives really look at what we're doing and join what we're doing.
All right, Jennifer Korn, Executive Director of the Hispanic Leadership Network. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And you as well, and thank you for watching Newsmax TV.